you Guardians fan out there, don't panic. Stop panicking. Don't panic. Listen to the next 40 minutes of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Guardians. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcasts. I'm Jeff. That's Justin. I want to start off with the controversy of the day. Listen, Daniel Espino and Chase DeLauter are hurt, and I sent out a quick tweet between.
Everybody panic!
I sent out a quick tweet between between two trainings I had. Like, I'm sure everyone's taking this well and being measured, because like when I got a text from like 2-3 people in that moment, and the email from Bart, and I was like, what is going on? And I checked it all, and then I went to Twitter to be like, great, that's 3 straight guys hurt from team injury. I've totally cursed all of these guys. We'll get into that, but yeah, and everyone's talking about, is he ever going to pitch? What a loss. And I'm like, he wasn't going to probably do much this year in general. And like, but here's the thing. I said, I'm sure everyone's taking a well-measured approach. And everyone's like, who are you to say how we should feel? Listen, you can't sit back and say, I am not concerned. I literally tweeted tonight, the 2019 Draft Night podcast, where I said, I will call my shot now. Daniel Espino is going to get hurt before he gets to the big leagues. Like, I called it on draft night. You can go find it in my Twitter. I posted it. I knew it was going to be more or less an inevitability. We'll also talk about some of the recent risks with injury on tonight's show, because they've taken some big swings. But at the same time, let's not assume that a guy who had been healthy until last year, yes, this is 2 things. I mean, 2 big things. He's had a lot of nicks and dimes and smaller things, and he's missed some time. But I felt like last year was the first year we really saw it affect a majority of the season. He's had a lot of injuries, but these are the first big ones. We'll get into all of that as well a little more. But before we do this guy is falling, let's, before we assume his career is over and he's Adam Miller, let's at least see what the updates are. That was my take. And if anyone who's like, oh, you can't tell me, or, is it okay to be concerned? I'm not even saying that. I literally, if you listen to this show at all or followed me at all, I've been lower on Espino than the consensus for since 2019, because this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. It's not that it is lack of concern on my end. It's like, I kind of expected this. We'll see what happens. But I mean, there were 2-3 people who just really got upset about this statement, and I don't know, immediately settled into personal attacks. So I don't know, people are weird, and it's always weird too when it's people you used to be friends with who you're clearly not anymore. So I'll just go ahead and air that dirty laundry and say I don't know. I'm sorry that getting 5 texts when I never get more than 1 about something like this made me think people were reacting.
And one of them wasn't even for me. I knew not to text you today, because you had training, and I also knew you'd figure it out sooner or later whenever you had a break between training. But yeah, it was definitely a sky falling type of moment for sure when the news came out. I mean, obviously we didn't see Daniel Espino after April last year. That was disappointing. First it was the knee, and then it was the shoulder, and then it was the shoulder again. So everything I heard last fall was, ready to rock and roll for spring training in 2023. Obviously hasn't been the case. Look, right now it's 8. They said 8 weeks downtime prior to returning to a throwing progression. So that, it's still early. It's still late February. So we're talking, there's a good chance he could be throwing again in May. If that puts him on track to maybe pitch in an affiliate in June, that could be fine. It depends. Now, yeah, shoulders are tricky. They're not good. They're probably worse than elbows. You would rather see a guy get Tommy John surgery than you would shoulder surgery, because there's a much more documented history of success coming back from Tommy John surgery than there is serious shoulder injuries. I mean, that's the end of the career of some really good players. I actually pulled some data up if you're curious, Jeff. So Julio Arias was one of the more examined cases that happened.
He's like the only player that's happened to at a young age, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Julio Urias is unique, where he was pitching in the minor leagues at age 16 because he was so young. It
like
was
the
wild.
double A
So
at
good.
16, right?
Yeah, I remember watching
upper
him at Great
minors.
Lakes. He was good.
Yeah.
So he had the capsule tear basically as well. He has obviously recovered just fine. It took him a while for sure. He wasn't the same for quite some time. Let me see if I can find when he was out. I said I did a bunch of research, and here I am still looking for some information. But I know he had the surgery. What was it, back in 2014? I don't know. It's been a while since he's had the surgery, but
I mean, it really slowed his.
So long.
Yeah, he really slowed his climb. Like, he was one of those guys, and then he also had the off the field stuff, which we can't look past. That really also kind of affected him. But yeah, I think it was. Was it after?
Well, he made his debut in 2014, so he.
I think it was 2015. I thought it was like at age 18. I thought it was because
I think it was 2018 because in 2018 he only pitched like 10 innings, maybe 14 innings.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was like before he was like really broken in.
So from 18 to 2019 he barely pitched, but 2019 he threw 80 innings. 2020 is 2020 he threw 55, but the last 2 years he's eclipsed 175 innings. I would say that's pretty good. He's 25, so that's one good case. There are others that weren't so great, and the list I'm finding here has Johan Santana, where I think that actually threatened his career at the end. It was towards the end of his career when he had this issue, and I think that was why he had a hard time coming back. Other issues have been Mark Pryor, which is not a good example because obviously things that ruined a very bright career for him. Dallas Braden to the perfect game, and that was kind of the end for him. Chris Young, he pitched for quite a while, but he was never great. Shinman Wong had a couple of nice seasons too. Those guys all had the same surgery, so it's a mixed bag when it comes to this. That's the scary part. Shoulders, it's a muscle thing, and this is not just one thing. So it's I'm not going to try to be a doctor here, but it's he tore the anterior capsule of his shoulder, and he has a strain of the subscap. And I know one of the mechanical things people really focus on in terms of scouting is scap rotation, and that's really important for pitchers. And I saw a great tweet tonight from Sure on Health, Jonathan Sure.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I got that from you.
Oh yeah, I think I did say it to you. He said he thought of Julio Urias, who tore that and had surgery in 2017, and basically his whole finding was that injuries like that do often need surgery to correct. Like he said, it's eight weeks for the strain of the most powerful muscle is the rotator cuff, which is the subscapularis. Tears similar to Espino's tears often is surgery related. So he hasn't had surgery yet, so let's not put the cart in front of the horse. But if he does have surgery, that's certainly another conversation to have. Let's wait and see what happens. Same thing with Cody Morris yesterday. Both. It was a tough conversation to have about Cody Morris as well. We both had some very negative views on what was going to happen with him. But Cody Morris, the plan for him is to bring him along slowly. That he might still pitch, so they might just have to be careful with him. They're managing whatever pain he's feeling right now. This is a lot more serious than that, but we'll see where they are in 8 weeks. But that was also what happened last year, I will say. So anybody who is concerned, it was, it's the knee injury. He's going to be back soon, and then it was he'll be back soon, and then I'll be back at the end of the year. And he was never back. And
no,
you were talking about Espino's injuries. This is
why don't we'll save? Okay. I think we should save the injuries. I do want to before we get to that part, throw out two things as I heard you talking. One. People were asking about the shoulder thing. Also think about how hard of an area that is to rest, doctor or not. Like when you need something to get better, you have to not rest, not really move and use. It's a very hard area to do that in. Even with a sling, it's going to be hard to restrict movement. Two, when we look at that list, we're going to see last year was also a shoulder injury. I'm going to make a statement here before we get into segment two. One has to wonder, not only did, Jose wait to have surgery and tough it out and work for him, but did Espino maybe put off surgery and now we're seeing the effects of it now? We'll get into why I'm making that statement in a moment. But first, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. And I say our friends because, I've been getting Built Bar since 2019. Sorry, Justin. I'm just going to throw that right at you here. I'm going to let you know that I've been getting Built Bars that long. And I love them. They're delicious. Like I said, I think coconut and chocolate are the things they do best. Peanut butter is solid, and the granola is really good. You just can't go wrong with BuiltBar.com. But you can now also get them at Walmart and at Sam's Club. You don't have to wait for shipping. You don't have to wait for delivery. But if you do want to try all of their fantastic flavors, head to BuiltBar.com. Use the promo code LOCK15. Check it out for yourself. I've had a few listeners come back and be like, now I'm getting these all the time. Thanks a lot. So go check out Built Bar. I'm not really a fan of protein bars. I've loved this product since the minute they sent them. It's delicious. It's great. High protein, low sugar, low calorie. Perfect for a snack in between type of deal. Go to BuiltBar.com today. Use the promo code LOCK15 or head to Walmart and Sam's Club to go to the pharmacy aisle, because that's where they are, to try this fantastic product. So why don't you bring up the Espino list after I cut you off there?
Yeah, that's fine. Buddy of ours, or mine, Willie Hood, had a tweet earlier tonight, basically just documenting the injuries we've heard about. He had shoulder inflammation in 2021. That was during instructs, not super widely known at that point, I think. Obviously, the knee patellar injury last year, and then that led to some shoulder inflammation. I don't know if that was natural or if that was brought on by any sort of compensation for the knee issue, where that became. And then now we have the shoulder capsule tear and the scap strain. So, like you said, none of this happened before he pitched. Like, he got into the pros and was on the mound. I mean, when they drafted him, he was in Mahoning Valley that same year, I believe, which is incredibly rare, right? So they drafted him in the first round in 2019. He pitched 13 innings in high A and rookie ball, and then 10 innings in short season ball, RIP short season ball. So that was incredibly rare. Obviously, we see they don't really do that now. Had to miss 2020, but he pitched all at the alternate site that year, and reports were fine. 2021, totally healthy, didn't really have a whole lot of issues. I think obviously they shut him down in instructs like we talked about, but he threw, over 90 innings there. So that was a okay season for him. And then obviously last year, what happened, and now here we are. So it has cropped up in a hurry on him. And here's the interesting thing. I know you said the issue with the delaying surgery, and I don't know what they would have recommended, but this should tell you how hard it is to throw a baseball and the pressure it puts on guys. Daniel Espino is a workout warrior, right? This guy, yes. we see all the time the videos and the interviews about how this guy is in the gym. He is working his tail off on his body. He stretches multiple times a day. I heard that from coaches in Lake County 2 years ago.
That was brought up by multiple people last offseason. Like, how has this guy avoided getting hurt? And then like that, and I talked about that. I'm like, maybe flexibility is the key. Like, maybe that's why I'm going to be wrong and he's not going to have a big injury. Like, I talked about this not that, I'm saying, why weren't you listening? More like, no, I was one of those people. I'm like, well, maybe it's this, like, like he really works at that. Like, that's one of those things. It unfortunately has not stayed true to the overall health, but yeah,
it just tells you, I think, that some of this stuff is unavoidable. That's why shoulders and elbows are difficult to recover from. And
he's not the biggest guy, and he puts a lot of pressure on himself.
It's not necessarily the height though. Like, the guy is built. Like he is,
but it's not. No, I mean, his body is built.
Bad mechanics.
No, there's some. There was some concerns with the delivery on draft night. Like, he has a delivery that's a concern, and again, he is well proportioned. He's strong, but he's still a smaller frame. Like, overall, he's a 6'2" righty. That is an undersized righty by definition of the league. Like, it is a smaller form, and just some levels it gets back to your middle school physics. Force equals mass times acceleration. The more acceleration you're getting on that baseball, the mass is staying the same. So you're putting more force to get it there, and that is force exerted on your body.
Well, science involves math, so I'm not going to get into this conversation because we know how it goes when I do math. But
I wrote a piece on this way back in the day at IBI, where I consulted my friend who's an astronomer in physics PhD about, like, is this logical? He goes, yeah, more or less. He might have also been feeling lazy, so this might actually not be true. But But yeah, no, it is on a basic level. Like, he's not the biggest guy in terms of build, not in terms of like bulk. He is, like I said, he's in great shape. But yeah, it's, I talked to people. I got three draft tweets tonight. Like, I just got the score apparently just sent me an alert on it 18 minutes ago. I'm like, they're a little behind.
Oh, come on, the score. They got good people working for them. They
do.
They have our buddy Travis Sawchik. They do better by him. Come on.
No, I just got one about Mike Boev that I need to check out what he did against UCLA. Like that's, I talk to people. It's my way of saying that. Listen, I had people saying that there were teams that were Espino was off boards because they just thought there was no way to hold up. And they didn't love the delivery. They were afraid of just where the velocity was going, and that with a smaller height frame thing that he may not be able to do it. And then, he stayed relatively healthy. He was always kind of nicked up. He didn't have the big innings, as you talked about. You kind of expect a guy to get built up to. But the last offseason was kind of a celebration of, hey, I am thankfully and very happily wrong. This guy's a unicorn. He might be the best right-hand pitching prospect in baseball. Now, sadly, with everyone getting kind of up in arms today, we'll get into Chase DeLauter. He kind of got left in the background. His, in some ways, scares me more than this, if I'm being honest. We'll get into why it scares me more, maybe more like into the third segment of the show. But the other thing that's kind of a sad thing is the overreaction is Danny Salazar, to me, just because, again, we don't know what's happening here. And Salazar, we've had discussions on here about it. I had heard from someone that they thought he was on a clock. They didn't think he would be able to hold up. And then, there was other talk about like putting in the time and things like that. We don't need to dig into all of that. But to me, Daniel Espino is the number one pitching prospect in this system since Adam Miller. And that is what,
now you're going to rile some.
No, I'm really, it's like for people who said, I'm not showing enough concern. That's you look at Adam Miller. Adam Miller was a top 3 right-handed pitching prospect in baseball who sadly never got to the big leagues. This Espino situation doesn't mirror that because, in some ways it does, because Miller was perfectly happy until he got perfectly happy. He probably was too, but he's perfectly healthy without any issues at all until the upper minors, and then it just constantly happened. Yeah. So we'll see what happens here. Again, I think he's probably gonna have shoulder surgery. That's my call. I think he's gonna be out for the year. I think it's gonna happen. I think it's a matter of time. I don't know. Again, like he had a shoulder issue, and that's part of the reason he didn't pitch last year. And if this is related to that, it's like, man, if they just gotten surgery in August instead of like wait and see. I know it's like if you wait and see and everything goes well, it means that the guy is ready for this year as opposed to having to wait a full year. But like if they not played wait and see, if this was the same shoulder that was bothering him before, then like you also just lost, 9 months of potential recouping recovery time by doing that. So it's a gamble sometimes. And sometimes the players don't want to go through with it. So there's that as well. And I can't fault anyone for how they want to. I am not here to gatekeep someone's body. It's just a general rule of mine. So I'm not going to do that. But I still think he is a really interesting prospect. I think he's a really good prospect. But like, if you listen to the show, there's a reason that Justin and I went against the flow. There's a reason why he was not the number one prospect. And we have explained that multiple times. Mm-hmm. And it shows here. Like we look at it kind of a holistic whole view. It goes beyond just like pure ceiling.
And that was before with this news today.
Yeah.
Like that was before.
But this represents why,
right.
This shows why we went the way we did. And I think it's, like I said, I don't want to do sky is falling. I don't want to naturally assume it's going to be bad. I'm like, let's wait and see. Not saying have concerns. I've had concerns since day one with Espino's health. But let's really wait and see how it goes. I talked to Justin beforehand. The one thing I wanted to talk about is it's kind of fascinating. Listen, the Cleveland Guardians, people get Moneyball wrong all the time. Moneyball wasn't about walking and playing guys out of position. What it was trying to find market inequalities. It's trying to find the things that aren't properly valued by the rest of the league. And one was that defense was overvalued, so you don't pay for defense. Like you don't even care about defense. Stolen bases at the time were viewed as not valuable in that system either. So they were looking for the inequalities. Cleveland's been trying to do that forever. I go back to when I first started covering the draft. They were looking for undersized guys. They were looking at players who probably fell a round or two shorter. Pun not intended, but great. But I don't even think I used the right word, so I don't even think it works. But they fell short in the draft due to their height. Undersized righties, undersized lefties, guys who maybe would have had a higher valuation if they had 2 to 3 inches more. So I thought they might take Marcus Stroman instead of Tyler Naquin. It didn't happen, but it was a lot of guys like that. Their recent one, since about 2014, this was one of the most during the Shapiro era in particular. This was like the most conservative drafting team in baseball. It was definitely top 5, and that's why for a long time in there, like nobody thought they'd take Clint Frazier Everyone thought it'd be Colin Moran right there. Like it was, a lot of things like that. But starting in 2014 with the Brady Aiken 2015, I should say, with Brady Aiken, they've taken some big swings on players with big concerns early. Will Benson's been perfectly healthy since then, though there were, concerns with the swing. Then you go to 2018, Bo Naylor, he's been healthy, but Ethan Hankins, like there were concerns about his elbow in that draft year. And guess what? He's had Tommy John cert since. Lenny Torres, it was just kind of he's a raw kid. There wasn't anything else other than him being raw. So I don't really, even though he's had surgery since, I don't necessarily put that on them. Daniel Espino, we've already talked about the issues. Tanner Burns that had elbow issues in college. Carson Tucker, 2020 is a weird year. He didn't have anything that I know of, but he's had a lot since. Gavin Williams, he had big concerns. It's part of the reason why he kind of slid a bit in spite of his stuff. Justin Campbell's been healthy. And Chase DeLauter had the broken foot, but he'd also had been nicked up his entire time in college. Like I said, we'll probably save some of the DeLauter talk for segment 3, but they have viewed this as a market inequality. We get a better talent by drafting an injured player. And then if you're like, why would they do that? Well, they've spent a ton of time on mechanics and how the body works, and they have scientists and approaches, and that's how they get that extra velocity and spin out of guys. They work on your body mechanics to help keep you healthier. They go for athletes who can adjust. They also have full-time training staff. They have all the money not all the money in the world. They have quite a bit of money. So they feel like maybe a guy who is injury plagued won't be when he gets here because of what we have in place. All of the things that are in terms of the mechanics, in terms of availability of doctors, in terms of being checked on more constantly, like just double checking the guys are healthy. I'm sure they're checking on some of these guys quite often who have had, some injuries, just like, have someone in there going through things. So they think that they're more likely to be healthy and fine, and that they can get a guy who frankly would be gone 10 picks before that. So it's a very interesting approach. And I get why they're doing it. And clearly, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Comment below if you think I'm off base with this. But I mean, it looks to me like they are targeting players who have health concerns as opposed to like red flag concerns or other things. Am I crazy? Do I need to get my tinfoil hat instead of the beanie, Justin?
I think you have a point, but I would also phrase it like this. I think this is an opportune franchise. They look for ways to, like you said, they do look for sort of ways to exploit the market where they can. So I would look at it like, okay, Brady Aiken they considered him a first round talent, right? If he was healthy, he was number 1 overall pick the year before. It was taking a risk. I don't necessarily know if they were like, oh, let's take the injured guy because we know we can get him back to health, he'll be fine. I think it was, at 17 overall in 2015, we're not going to get a player better than Brady Aiken. And there are some health concerns. Let's take a swing and see what happens. Ethan Hankins, the same thing at 35 in 2018. I mean, look, a high school right-handed pitcher has never gone 1-1. It probably never will. But there was talk about Ethan Hankins
too. Hankins, Giolito, Lesko, the guys. It's like, it seems like they always get hurt.
Yeah, but there was talk during the draft season, oh, Hankins could be one of the guys you would consider as a high school 1-1, right? Right-hander. It hasn't happened yet, but there was at least the discussion around him. So they knew he was good, and he hadn't had surgery yet. He had some shoulder problems as an amateur, but it was okay. That's a risk we're willing to take because the upside is high and he's falling on the draft and no one's taken him. Espino, same thing. Like you said, he was off a lot of people's draft boards because of the delivery, because the injury concerns, the arm, that kind of stuff, and the stature. I think it was another case of, okay, at 24 overall, who is the better talent? If we feel like it's going to be fine, let's take a risk here and get a guy at 24 that, if he was 6'4", he would be getting love at the top 10. And I don't know that
a top 10 guy like a month before that draft too. Like I thought he'd be the first right-hander off the board. So definitely just to back up what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, most people thought he was that good in the draft. It just, again, it was a height and delivery thing. And then Chase DeLauter, I don't know if I really consider him in this group. I know you would know better than I would, but I remember reading in the months leading up to the draft that it wasn't necessarily that his foot injury bothered some people. It was just the lack of exposure and the lack of competition and the foot injury taking him out of a lot of time he could have played in college. I think a lot of that had to do with it. But that was also opportune for them too. They thought, okay, this is a guy we think is a first-round talent. Maybe he plays the entire season healthy, And even though the competition is less than what they might prefer, this is a guy that should have gone in the top 10. So I think for them, are they seeing opportunities with injured players where they can go out and get talent that's being undervalued? Yes. I don't necessarily think they're looking at the injuries and saying, let's take injured guys. I think they are looking for opportunities where...
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. We're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I just think that the opportunity to get the inefficiency in the market, they view it as the injured player. Or the player that is viewed to be, not necessarily injured, but a player who's viewed to be an injury risk because these guys don't have the medical attention they're going to get once they join a major league team.
Maybe. I do think it is trying to exploit an inefficiency for sure. It has happened where a lot of these guys have been injured. Like, the Will Benson first round pick doesn't really go for this, but I think obviously they took Benson under slot in the first round to go over slot with Nolan Jones in the second round and things like that. They've done that too. I think it's just them being opportune, like we said, trying to exploit some inefficiencies in the draft for them to find ways. Like the great thing is about this team, and we haven't really talked about it a lot. No one's really talked about it. Is they're on a 10-year stretch where they've been really successful. Save for 2015 and 2021 was not fantastic. So save for like 2 years, they have not. They've been eight out of the last 10 years. They've been pretty good. So they're constantly picking in the low 20s and mid 20s. Like that, Chase DeLauter at 16 was their highest pick they've had since 2016.
Since Will
Benson. So they're continuing
to pick since 2013.
Yeah, Jackson Frazier. That was their last pick. He might be back high.
To Clint again. I think I've heard he's going back and forth on it. I don't know.
No, last I heard was Jackson, but Jackson, Clint, Frazier draft. So
yeah,
this team is continually picking in the mid to late 20s. So it makes sense for them to maybe go out and take some of those shots because they're not drafting top 10 talents because they're not picking that high. And they have to sustain this somehow if they don't want to ever go into the full teardown rebuild. That's why they maybe have to do that. So that's, has it worked out the best? Not so much, but I think they are just looking for ways to exploit inefficiencies, like you said, and this happens to be the way they're doing it. And I think it's happening because of where they're picking in the draft constantly too, which is a good thing, but it's also, this is where you get the risk outcomes.
Yep, and they've always been about that. It's the same reason they really favored the cold weather guys too. I should have mentioned that in terms of some of it because you don't get to see them as much, especially in that's how Quentin Holmes happens, right? Like no one gets to really see him because it's a really bad winter. But I'm gonna cut us both off here. I'm gonna come back and explain why I think Chase DeLauter fits. We're gonna get into the Chase DeLauter injury, why it concerns me, and we got a big name retirement we got to talk about as well in segment 3. So make sure you jump around so we can give some love to Cleveland Guardians players, as well as talking, some CD and why, one of the most interesting players in the minor leagues you may not get a chance to see until late in the year, if at all, with the way they handle things. But first, we are going to talk about our good friends over at FanDuel.com. Let me throw up our fancy dancy little banner. There we go. As it says, make every moment matter more. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get into a sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and three. Again, we're going to say bet the over on the Cleveland Guardians. Even losing these 3 players from team injury, still bet the over. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And again, I want to reiterate, the curse of team injury is very high. I'm going to sit here and say, I was going to read it off. But for those of you in the audio version, I took Bo Naylor, then Daniel Espino on help. Excuse me. Angel Martinez, Cody Morris, Will Brennan, Joey Cantillo's already screwed. Chase DeLauter, Jason Churio, John Kenzie Noel, Parker Messick, Brian Lavastida also screwed. Tim Herron, Nate Furman, Gabby Rodriguez, and I believe Ryan Webb's arm got eaten by a crocodile today. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but yeah, crocodile in Arizona. I know they don't even live there. Just jumped up and ate his arm. So
if you see any of these guys in Arizona, please go and put some bubble wrap around them.
Yes,
please.
Yes, we are. If there's one more, then this is officially a curse. If we can just get into it, then
I can't.
I love the DeLauter delayed by foot injury. That's great. That is a thing. It just
yes. If you're watching the YouTube portion, the lower third says DeLauter delayed. I'm not making fun of the injury, but look, let's be honest here. We laugh so we don't cry because this has been a devastating 2 days. I was like, you know what? I don't want to say I was laughing, but Jacob deGrom was announced as, he was having some side muscle or whatever injuries when he got to spring training with Texas. And I was like, well, that was, should have been the free spot on your bingo card, right? And I was like, oh, there's no news out of Guardians camp. No news is good news. Well, 2 days in a row, we've been devastated by news. And like I said, I'm not making fun of anybody's injury. I'm just doing it so we laugh, so we don't cry. But 4 to 5 months for Chase DeLauter return to play. He had surgery on a small fracture at the base of his fifth toe in his left foot. That is the same foot he injured in college. Recommended surgery, the same one that did his initial surgery. They replaced
a screw,
left foot screw in a bone graft in the area of the fracture. So he is in a walking boot. They are return to play 4 to 5 months. So we're talking, playing in complex league games in July and maybe out to an affiliate in August or sometime in July if they're lucky. So that is not great news either.
So here's my thing on DeLauter. And one of the reasons I was a little concerned with him, and I was not alone, but he is one of those guys that it's been a lot of little injuries here or there, and he missed time in his sophomore year due to that as well. So he's never been really fully healthy in college. So part of me wondered if it's like I talked before the show with Justin, like the Zion Williamson effect, where he's such an explosive athlete, is it putting too much strain on his body? I don't know, but yeah. And I saw other people talk about like, why is it a little like cut the thing off? Your little toe does a lot with your balance. Like it matters in your gait and things like that. So, I didn't see anyone actually saying like cut it off, but I did see people being like, why is the little toe even matter?
Jeez.
It's just like, why does it's like, it affects your gait, it affects your balance. It's the same foot injury. If this takes the long way, then we're talking end of July, which means he'd probably go out to the complex league because he hadn't played baseball in, over a year at that point, like 16 months, 18 months. So he'd probably be in the maybe we'd see him in like low A by September, because again, he was playing at James Madison. In general, this is a guy, just to throw it out there, he played more games in the Cape than he ever did in a season at James Madison because of being dinged up. He had 34 games in the Cape. He had a total of 66 at James Madison. Now, one of those was a COVID year, but it was 26 games and 24 games. So yeah, he's had histories of little injuries, and unfortunately, this is 2 big ones now with this foot. And yeah, if you want to blame me for it, I'll own it, because team injury coming to the rescue.
Yeah, not much to say here. I mean, he hasn't played. It's not a good situation, and this is another one too. I also wouldn't freak out about yet too, because I'm not going to go through the examples of all the foot guys. I know Zach Meisel tweeted the same thing. Everybody was probably thinking was the
Zydrunas.
Yeah, and you want to know what?
And Zydrunas was 7'3". Like that's a weird,
Well, DeLauter's not short either, but
7'3" is just a unusual. I mean, for a human body, that is the extreme.
Well, okay. He also went on to have a good career. He had a long, and he was beloved by Cleveland. So I'm not saying this is similar, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. But the 2 things I would note here too on Espino and DeLauter before we need to get into the retirement thing of Jason Kipnis. But Espino's 40-man time comes up this winter. He is going to be on the 40-man protection list. He'll be on the 40-man roster no matter what. This injury doesn't change that. This injury changes nothing about how they feel about him. He's going to be on the 40. He just may not pitch the majors this year. Maybe he will. DeLauter, this is his first year. If he misses the first year, yes, it's not what you want, but I wouldn't necessarily. He's still young he was still young. I don't know. Again, not freaking out. I think there's a lot of time to figure out what's going to happen. Other guys have recovered from foot surgeries. I would rather them be overcautious about things like this than I would them pushing it and try to get him back and then end up just screwing things up. So I'm not going to freak out here. It's disappointing as people who like prospects and want to see someone like DeLauter because he could be a special talent. But in the long term of things, it's just one thing for right now, and they have to be safe. And he's still got 3 other years of seasons to prove whether or not he belongs on the 40 when the time comes.
No, the other thing, just in terms of all of this as you're talking there. I see a lot of people being like, oh, they're just hurt, or people being like, there's no such thing as any prospect. This team has been built on prospects. That's a silly take. Like this is not a team that's been, yes, Rosario and Jimenez were already proven products, but most of these guys are prospects. And then like, oh, let's just trade them. Now you can't trade hurt players to begin with.
Wow.
And why would you sell at the nadir? Nadir? I can't say the word. Why would you sell at their lowest point? Why are we selling when they're in Death Valley instead of being on Mount Everest? That's not how this team operates. So just to roll that out there.
And the other thing I see people saying too is that, oh, well, they should have traded Espino when they had the chance for Sean Murphy or Brian Reynolds or whoever else is out there. That doesn't change anything. You can say that all you want, but teams knew that Espino had shoulder problems last year. They were likely to get it. Everything is pending physicals, right? So he might have set off some red flags for that as well. Teams knew what they were getting into. The Guardians knew, and there's no guarantee just because you trade them things work out better for you than they do for somebody else. These things are always, I have come around in recent years from being a prospect hugger to trade the prospects for good players, but don't oversell your prospects either. Like, get a good deal, but I'm also more willing to trade guys. Would I have traded Espino for anybody this offseason? Probably not. No. Not even when I know now I wouldn't. But I'm not saying never trade him.
Hard to come by. That's the thing.
Yeah, and he's a special talent. So, and again, like you said, no one's writing him off at this point. So
he was the only person with 270 grade potential pitches in the mind. He had the best fastball and the best slider. Like would you rather he turns into nothing and you held on too long, or would you rather trade Jacob deGrom?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it's a tough one to ask, and that's why the people who make decisions like this are getting paid to do it, and that's why we're sort of paid to talk about it. I don't really know how to phrase it. I guess we sort of are, but that's why we're talking about it and not making the decision. But
I got a question for you.
Oh boy.
Ready for this one? This
I'm
is
totally
off the cuff.
You
ready for this one? Who has a higher career WAR in Cleveland, Asdrubal Cabrera or Jason Kipnis?
I'm going to say Jason Kipnis. No. I'm going to say Asdrubal Cabrera.
It is Asdrubal Cabrera.
Boo.
So I was going through kind of some of the players. Like Cleveland has kind of a rich history at second base. Obviously, Nap Lajoie is kind of the king. He's the all-time WAR leader. Joe Gordon is who they traded. I'm blanking on the big chief, what his name was. He went on one of the great win-win trades in baseball history. The Yankees won a bunch of World Series. Joe, he was Native American. That's why the big chief actually works. I saw that look there. I know what you're talking about. And Joe Gordon helped them win a World Series. Both sides got a World Series out of it. It just kind of some of those like Gordon, and then Ray Chapman famously died on the field. Bobby Avila also played a lot of second base and was one of the best. Like Jason Kipnis is probably not a top 5 second baseman in Cleveland Guardians history. Hot take, because it's one of the best positions they've had on the infield. That being said, he is one of the best, if not probably the best second baseman. In terms of, grand, I get Roberto Alomar was great for was he here for 2 years, 3 years? It was short, but
yeah, it was like 99 to 2001. Yeah,
it was not much, but Jason Kipnis is this team's best second baseman since. Like a lot of those great players, when I mentioned, the Joe Gordons and the Nap Lajoies, those were a long time ago. Probably since Bobby Avila played, right? I think that is the guy back in, and that's the 50s. So even if it's him, that's a long time ago. Like, I think, I know people are screaming Carlos Baerga. Listen, again, Carlos Baerga was offensively great at peak, but it was short. Baerga had a very short
you could argue that Jason Kipnis' peak was also short at the same time. And this is why we talked about second basemen and their attrition over their careers in the past, is that they tend to fall off.
Kipnis has a higher career WAR than Baerga, which is kind of why I initially was like going over and past it. But it's interesting, like Kipnis, here's what's funny. You ready? 30, just, great random stat here. By Baseball Reference career WAR, 33rd, Asdrubal Cabrera amongst all players in Cleveland. 34, Jason Kipnis. 35, Roberto Alomar. 36, Carlos Baerga. They're all in a row.
And 29 of those, or I'm sorry,
and 39 by the way, if you go down to 39, there's Joe Gordon. Just speaking about second baseman in this franchise history.
So, are you trying to say you hate Jason Kipnis? Do you think he's not good? Is that what you're saying?
No, I am saying Jason Kipnis is a very good player. At his peak, he was one of the best second basemen in baseball. He had his ups and his downs. It was a short peak. I hadn't realized, honestly, that he hadn't retired yet. Maybe that makes me a terrible human being as a fan of this team. But yeah, I think we should take a moment and appreciate a guy who was here, who signed an extension, right? Was one of those guys who was locked in. Health was a bugaboo for him, but still, you look at the players who have played in Cleveland at that position. He's probably, in fairness, the best since Baerga in terms of a long term. Again, Roberto Alomar was brilliant in the short term. Ronnie Belliard was great for a little period, but he was a really good player, and I think he's earned that due.
Yeah, I will remember Jason Kipnis for being the voice and the heartbeat of those mid 2000s teams, the 2015, 16, even 13. I guess he was still learning in 2013, but 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, he was the voice and the heart of those teams. He was always accountable for his performance and other people's even too. I mean, when they were not playing well, you could count on him to always talk to whoever media was out there talking to him, whether it was, Andre or Zach or whoever, and talk about what was going on with the team or talk about his struggles, talk about just the vibe and what the team needs to do and hold up their end of the bargain. And he always played hard. I don't think that guy ever took a play off. He always
part of his health issue.
Yeah. I mean, there's that for sure. He played hard. And I think he always gave 100%. I think he played through some injuries probably as well throughout his time here. He switched to center field. Remember twice he switched to center field.
He was an outfielder in college.
Yeah, he was. And the problem is that he started switching to the outfield later in his career when he probably shouldn't have been, but he did it because Cleveland had a good thing going with Urshela and Diaz at third. And then Bradley Zimmer hurt his hand. So they needed a center fielder and he just wanted to contribute any way he could. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was willing to go out there and make an impact every which way he could. I'll remember the 2016 World Series. I'll remember trying to think of some of his grand slams, the inside the park home run he hit for his 100th home run, the grand slam he hit in his final, I think one of his last at bats in Cleveland in 2019 when things weren't going well.
That rookie season where he unfortunately got hurt, but I mean he came out we were all waiting on Lonnie. Lonnie was the number one prospect, and then Kipnis came.
I was waiting on Cord Phelps.
I was a Cord Phelps guy all the way as well, so I can't comment. But it's I just appreciate him for the depth, the breadth and the depth. Is that how they say it? I mean, he played 1,100 games in his career, 1,165. He played over 1,100 in Cleveland.
Right. He showed up every day. I mean, his worst season was 90 games, if you don't count the rookie year because he came up halfway through.
Yeah. No, he was a solid performer for a long time. Second best second round pick in franchise history. Has a higher career award than Sean Casey, which might surprise some people, even though Sean Casey played 300 more games. You combine them both, you still don't get to Albert Bell, but hey, that's fine. I know there's always a degree of disappointment for some because it felt like Kipnis was going to be like a star. Instead, he settled into a very good player. I see a lot of people want him to be part of the radio team here. I don't know if he resides in Cleveland or has any interest in it. I wouldn't be opposed to. Yeah, I think he's a Chicago guy. I think he's always kind of been a Chicago guy. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. I saw a lot of people advocating get rid of Jensen Lewis and bring him in. I'm not going to state anything because I don't really watch a lot of Jensen, so I can't have an opinion there. I'm never going to advocate most people losing their job outside of like Angel Hernandez. But
he'd be good at it. He would be good.
I think he'd be good at it. I think he definitely has a future in that if that's his calling card. We've gotten super long. We should.
Can we end on one? I want to end on one thing in the audio. This is going to really annoy some people listening if they're catching at the end. The one thing that would have been really great for Jason Kipnis, I would have been happy for him, is if that foul ball in the 2016 World Series, it looked like it was a home run coming off the bat, was a home run. I was very convinced that was going to be a home run watching at home, and it was not. So happy trails, Jason. You were so close. But enjoy retirement. And If anybody's listening, want to help us get him on the podcast, we tweeted at him asking him if he wanted to come on. We'd love to have him on. If you want us to have him on, tweet at him and ask him, and hopefully he'll relent and talk about his career and let us gush over him on here, I guess.
Yeah. Well, having talked about our gushing here at the end, we're gonna end the audio, head to the video. Thank you all for listening, rating, reviewing, being part of the Locked On Guardians team /family. Thank you for dealing with my random rants, and go Guardians, go. So yeah, I think it's really interesting looking at second base, but it's Jason Kipnis. We wish you well. I'm just gonna throw that out there again.
Yeah. Speaking of infielders playing the outfield, Jeff, we already know that Gabriel Arias is going to get some time in the outfield to see how that goes. Zach also tweeted from Arizona today that Tyler Freeman will join him out there.
Makes
sense.
How
do I feel about that? It does. I don't know. I buy Gabriel Arias outfield experiment a little more than Tyler Freeman. To me, Tyler Freeman is a second baseman. Could he play left field? Probably. I don't know if he could play. Maybe he could play center. I don't know. It's just it's a harder fit for me to believe. I guess it doesn't hurt if you could put Ernie Clement out there. Ernie Clement was fast and was a hard player as well.
We played Michael Martinez out there.
Yeah, I guess.
Speaking of the World Series.
Really, yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think it's fine as an experiment. I just don't
Mike Freeman played out there. Why not Tyler Freeman? Let's get all the Freemans. Let's make an all Freeman outfield. Let's go trade for Freddie Freeman. Let's make the Freeman only.
Put him in center field. Okay, I'm down.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. No, I mean it just, especially if you're gonna have. Do you think there's a world where both those two make this roster? I know we're gonna get into some debates. I do too. And the more depth, the better. And a lot of their top prospects are lefties, and these two are righties. Which Freeman and Arias. It's it gives them more and different looks.
Here's the issue with this, and I don't want to get into it today because this is a whole topic for another show we can do. But how you have both Arias and Freeman on the roster, and I know part of them playing the outfield is to try to get them some more playing time. But if both are on the roster, I have no idea how you get them playing time. I said this earlier today, is most benches feature guys who are your Jordan Luplos and Brandon Geyers, your backup catchers, your utility infielders, and some teams handle their bench better. And that's been one of my criticisms of this team and Frank Cohen to a respect, is that they don't utilize their bench all that well because they don't have guys on the bench that they play every day. It's usually just guys who are playing for a day to give somebody a rest versus maximizing your 26-man roster and having the best 26 guys. Instead, you have, Ernie Clement, and this is not a shot at Ernie Clement, but this is a guy you have in your roster who he plays every 6th or 7th day to give a guy a breather, and he's not necessarily good, but you're okay with him sitting for 6 days and playing because you're not super worried about his future. You're just trying to get a guy who you feel about can handle playing every 7th day and not worrying about what happens to him versus a prospect who you want to get playing time so you don't stun his development. How do you do that with Gabriel Arias and Tyler Freeman? Because they don't have a lot of major league exposure. They both might be able to be regular starters in the majors at some point, and the playing time isn't quite there. Even if you do add them to the outfield mix, there's still issues with playing time there. So that's my concern there. And like I said, I think we should probably dive deeper into that in a future show. But that's just one of the things in my mind with this outfield experiment with those two.
Could one argue, I know we're kind of moving on, but that maybe Gabby makes more sense to keep up and Freeman maybe to get those reps because of the extra missed time due to that labrum 2 years ago, that letting him play out a full season, he might be the one who needs more regular playing time, and whoever has that role, as you mentioned, will be a bench guy.
Yeah, even in Columbus, I mean, you can move things around too. You'll have Tania, you'll have Rocchio in AAA as well, and I guess Freeman fits in there, pretty well. So I guess it's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it does make more sense for one of those guys to go to AAA, but then Palacios maybe ends up being that guy that you're not super concerned about playing every day because they did that last year. This is not a real big topic we have to go deep on, but we do have the first 3 pitchers. We have the first 4. I put 3. I don't know why I put 3. It's 4. Cal Quantrill starts Saturday, the opener against the Reds in the Cactus League. Zach Plesac is on the next day, which is, I think, a Sunday game. Bieber will follow him, and then McKenzie. Excuse me. Some people were asking if that was like setting up the rotation for the regular season or something, but we knew Quantrill was going to get the first start because they need to get him ready to pitch in the World Baseball Classic and be ready to go. No surprises there. I don't really have any thoughts to offer. We just now know this is who you'll see pitch. I'm more curious to see how long Quantrill will go in his first start, because in theory, he should be the furthest along of all of them in terms of his buildup, because he's got to be ready soon for the WBC, which everybody who listens to us loves the World Baseball Classic, obviously, just like me. Like we talked about yesterday. If you didn't hear that argument,
I haven't looked at our comments yet to see what the reaction was to my hot
Jeff,
take.
Everybody disagrees with you. They love my takes. They love my takes on the All-Star game in the World Baseball Classic. You were definitely in the minority yesterday on that. No, actually, everybody agree with you, and that's fine. I'm just a giant nerd, and I soak up all things baseball. But I'm more curious to see like who follows them. To be honest with you, I'm more interested in seeing, like, do we see Tanner Bybee? Do we see Gavin Williams? Do we see Cade Smith? When do we see Tim Herron? Like, I'm just more curious to see who follows these guys early on. That's kind of the thing I always look for. This is going to be another unpopular opinion. I love spring training baseball. You know why? Because we get to see prospects play in random times throughout the game. And I love seeing these guys in spring training when most people haven't heard of them yet, or they get a chance to do something like make a big play or whatever. So I know it's going to be unpopular, but I enjoy that aspect of spring training that I'm sure nobody else will agree with. And that's fine. I'm happy being
that's the only thing that's good about it. That's literally the only thing that's good about it, is seeing the young players getting that chance. And, I talked about it a bit last year. What's nice about seeing those young players and them getting those opportunities at the big league level is like that. I talked about with the Espino last spring, where it's like, okay, I don't take a lot of value from spring training, but when he's a young guy performing well against vets, I do. So that's literally the only good thing about spring training, other than the fact it's return of baseball. But yeah,
I love March. I love March. March, like I said,
I don't watch college basketball, so March is like my dead zone. I mean, I watch college baseball, but I don't watch college basketball. So
March is my favorite month because, look, hope springs eternal in spring training. You have, I shouldn't say nobody's hurt, because clearly people are hurt, as we've discussed today, unfortunately. But, teams are all hopeful. No one's been eliminated yet, except for the Colorado Rockies and the Oakland Athletics. Only they've been.
No, the Pirates have been, as well as
they've been eliminated. Yeah, so that's unfortunate.
Oh, and what's this? I just heard the Yankees have been eliminated too.
Yeah, that's good thinking. Yeah, you got March Madness. You got some NASCAR. The Daytona 500s and
it's Memorial Day, right?
Count. No, that already happened this past weekend.
Oh,
no,
really?
It's
the Indy 500 that's on the holiday weekend.
But I enjoy watching golf from time to time, and then this year we're gonna have the WBC, so I'm excited for that. But
April would have been mine, just because you got NBA and NHL nearing postseason. Baseball is back with real games. College baseball is occurring, and you have the NFL draft. So that would have been, that's a sweet spot for me. April.
Yeah, I can see that. One of the things we talked about yesterday, we talked about the I Hate Steve Cohen committee. Steve Cohen is not bothered by the Cohen tax, he said today, and also he doesn't think that the economic reform committee is about him. So this is a man who does not care. So good for him, I guess. We thought yesterday it was going to be the I Hate Steve Cohen club, but it is apparently not the I Hate Steve Cohen club. So I don't know. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean, any group that has Dick Monfort is a bad sign. Like I said, I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again today. If you're with a Monfort, a Castellani, however you say their names, those are, I don't know, in Angelos, those are your bottom tier owners.
Yeah. And then I want to wrap up on a fun note here, just because I saw this on Twitter today. NBC Sports had a tweet that said, "What is the best comeback in sports of all time?" I, of course, put up the Indians and Mariners from August 5th, 2001. The Seattle Mariners, with 2 outs in the 9th inning, had a still had a 90%. I'm sorry, going into the ninth inning had a 90% win expectancy. They had a 100% win expectancy as late as the bottom of the eighth inning. And we all know the story. If you don't know by now, the Indians scored 12 runs in the last 3 innings of the regulation or the first before extra innings to tie things up, and they scored in the 11th inning to win. Is that the best comeback of all time, or is it the Cavs 3-1 comeback over the? I guess I would say that's the best series comeback of all time, and the best individual game comeback of all time is Indians over Mariners in 2001.
I will say, like, my personal association with that game makes it extra fun, just with the fact that that was back when it was like Sports Time Ohio, I believe, and if it was any game that like went like past 11 or something, you got for free. Like my family didn't have it, so I couldn't watch the games. Like I've talked about this before. We didn't have cable, so like WUAB 43, like, Jack Corrigan, right? Jack, not Jim. I always met Jack Corrigan is like Corrigan, my voice of of baseball, because that's who I grew up with. And it was Hegan there right before he went to radio. So it was that's my thing, and I always love that so much. But that game went so late that it actually was on like their regular stream, so I got to watch it as it happened. Because as a kid, anytime you could get, I was probably in high school. What year was that one again? You said
that was 01. That was actually on ESPN.
Okay, no, I was in college.
Yeah,
it was actually
maybe that game was on ESPN, because I remember my dad went to the game. So my dad went to that game earlier that week. He and I had gone to a game where they played the Oakland Athletics, and I think we took Lake Tran used to do this thing where you could do park in their park in some lot, and you could take Lake Tran down. So we couldn't leave the game early, which I never would do anyway, because anybody who knows me knows I don't ever leave baseball games early. But we couldn't leave early, and Oakland was trouncing the Indians at the time, and we didn't leave. So my dad had tickets through his work on Sunday night against the Mariners, and this is 01. So I was like 7th grade at the time. So I stayed up to watch it, and he got home just as Omar Vizquel scored the winning run, or I'm sorry, Kenny Lofton scored the winning run. So never let him live that down.
Maybe I was watching on ESPN, or maybe I watched the replay, because the games would replay super late, because I was a college kid too. So that was after my freshman year of college. So I was probably staying up super late. So maybe that's why I thought it was on Sports Time Ohio. But either way, it is one of the craziest comebacks.
I hope if you didn't look the box score up, do you know who was the winning pitcher in that game for the Indians?
I don't.
You want to take a run at it? I have 2 fun facts about this game, actually, that I think are fascinating from who pitched in this game. The first one is who won the game.
I was just trying to think, I'm like 2001, who even was that pitching staff? Like who was left? I know I'm not gonna make a run at it. I can't pull up that in my mind right now.
It was John Rocker, who we don't have to talk about much longer on this podcast, but it was John Rocker. Any thought? No thoughts on John Rocker today? I don't want to get into it either.
I remember in ESPN, the magazine cover of him shooting lasers out of his eye at a bat. Talk about all hype and no substance. Like that guy was...
The other pitcher I think is interesting from this game. This was his major league debut. This pitcher went on to be famous for another baseball moment in later in his career. So a very unfortunate debut. He gave up 7 runs in 6 innings of relief. He just kind of went out there and took one for the team at this point, and they still somehow came back. But this pitcher later went on to give up Barry Bonds' record-breaking 63rd home run. Or was it?
Traber?
No, this was Mike Boxic.
Oh, Mike Boxic. Basic, right?
Boxic, yeah. Mike Boxic, who is I think does radio in Dallas now. But yeah, he went on to serve up one of Barry Bonds' historic home runs. I think it was 63. I think when he broke Mark McGwire. So it must have been 71. Is that what it was? He broke McGwire's record. McGwire was 70, so I think it was 70.
Is he the one who, or did he was, I think he served up
the 756?
I think he was 756. I think
okay, maybe you're right. It was one of those home runs that Boxic gave up a home run. It was one of Bonds' historic home runs, but this comeback against the Mariners was his major league debut, and he got shelled in relief of Dave Burba, who did not have a good outing, and went on to do some more unfortunate things, but not 2 things you want to be associated with. But at least the Cleveland won the game that day. So That was good. Jeff, you are severely cutting out here at the end, so we've gone an hour here at this point. I don't know what else you want to talk about, but I would say for our listeners, stay tuned later this week or next week. We'll have a guest in from Arizona, hopefully, who's down in spring training with the team. We'll have them on, I think, Monday of next week. So until tomorrow, go Guardians, go.